First of all, I'd like to welcome Conny Oveson, the District Governor for Rotary 1160. That's the whole island of Ireland. I was talking with Conny earlier today, and she mentioned that she's doing 2 visits to clubs today here in Kilkenny and also across the border in Newry, but without breaching any travel restrictions, because this is one of the advantages of Zoom, in that you can visit virtually without having to be there. That said, it's not the same. Conny, you're very welcome to join us this afternoon in Kilkenny. Are you in Tallow at the moment?
Yeah, I
am. It's a long way from Denmark to Tallow. What brought you that journey?
Well, first of all, may I say thank you for asking me along today. As always, you know, my Rotary heart is in Kilkenny. I have been there, thank God, so many times when I could, and it's a huge help, you know, on a meeting like this today or a presentation like this today, because I can assure you most of the clubs I visit, I don't know them. And you don't really remember them the same way either if you only meet them on Zoom. So thank you very much for that, you know, because you would have turned around and said, sure, we all know Conny, we don't need her to come and speak to us. But thank you very much. Well, Ian, yeah, it's kind of, it's a long story. And I have a long, exciting life at this point in my life. But I am from Denmark, and I came to Ireland in 1979, in my early 20s. Basically, I came over because my ex-husband came over with a company. He was a production manager for a Danish company, and it was in the early IDA days, which I'm sure most of you here on this call can remember. So arrived in Tallow. I thought I had landed on the moon, honestly. It was like being shifted back 50 years in time. A bit of it is still the same, but I live in Tallow, but I haven't lived here all the time. But I'm back in Tallow again since 2012. Yeah.
So yeah, what happened between leaving Tallow and coming back to Tallow? What did you do in that period?
Well, in that period, I moved to Youghal, where I'm now a member of that Rotary Club. I moved to Youghal, and I had a coffee shop, and I met Frank, my fellow Dane, in my coffee shop. And his contract over here ran out a few years later, and we went back to Denmark. And because he had still a job back in Denmark and a house, and I didn't really want to leave, but well, I did. And I guess I didn't want to lose Frank, so I did. And we were back in Denmark, but we didn't really kind of settle that well, and decided we wanted to try to get out in the world. We did try to get back to Ireland, but you know very well, in the late 80s, or, you know, thereabout early, well, it was late 80s, there wasn't much to come back to Ireland for. So we ended up in America instead. We ended up in California, in Southern California, in Palm Springs for a year, and then we moved into Laguna Beach, where we worked for J. Paul Getty's oldest granddaughter for 9 years. And yeah, there's a book in that, but I won't write the book. And you know, it just, and then we always wanted to come back to Ireland, and we saved and we saved and we saved. We wanted to come back and open a bed and breakfast. And it got prolonged because my daughter, in the meantime, met an Irish American in Greece and ended up coming back to America. He was at the time serving as a US Marine. And they came back, and I mean, you couldn't have made it up. He could have been transferred anywhere in the United States, but he actually came to Camp Pendleton in California, just down the road from where we were. And I had just got my first grandson, and they moved back, and they didn't have to live on base. They lived in Laguna Beach. So all of a sudden we became grandparents and, you know, parents again. So we weren't in such a rush, you know, to get back to Ireland. So it kept being extended. But finally in 2000, we said, we got to leave now. If we don't leave now, we'll never go back. You know, it was hard. It was a tough decision. So we came back in 2000, and yeah, we came back. We never got the bed and breakfast. That's another day story. But we ended up buying a business and a house in Cove. And then, unfortunately, in 2008, bad luck struck. You might remember, most of you, Jason for sure, how, you know, the recession started. And I remember the very, very kind Rotarian that really, really helped me through this. He said to us, I know you don't want to hear this, Connie, but you're only going to be the first of many. And we unfortunately lost our business, our house, our life savings.
My goodness.
Poor Frank had a breakdown. We had to ship him off to America for 3 months to get away from here, but he's good now. But it was a tough period, and that meant that we moved back to Tallow again. Just happened to come and visit old friends one day, and this house we're in was being built by my very best friend here in Tallow, and I just turned around and said, would you rent that out to Frank and I? And he's like, do you want to come back to Tallow? And I'm like, absolutely, I want. And here we are, you know, and happy days. So
Well,
that's in short.
that's a story of resilience, if nothing else, Connie, isn't it? That
Yeah,
you
it
were
is.
drawn back to this place that you thought originally was on the moon, but and now you're over the moon to be back there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lovely village, you know. It's a town, you know, a small town with 1,000 people. But we always say to people, it's a place that's kind of everybody else forgot about, you know, because everything is the same. It's the same people that live here, and you know, there's just a lovely community spirit, and theoretically, we have everything here. You know, it's just that Connie, of course, wants more, so she goes other places.
Yeah.
You know.
And
Yeah.
what drew you to Rotary initially?
Well, what drew me to Rotary was that my dear old friend Freddie Peterson, who is still a Rotarian in Glenmire Rotary Club, he's a fellow Dane. Him and I, we happened to come to Ireland in the same year in '79, and we met a few years later, and we've been lifelong friends ever since. Freddie was in Round Table, and you may remember too that back in the days when you were in Round Table and you turned 40, you basically automatically moved into Rotary. So Freddie had moved into Rotary, and so I knew. I mean, we were invited to a lot of events. Back then, that club was very vibrant, and you know, so we got to know a lot of them and sort of got to understand a bit of what Rotary was. So when we came back from America and had moved to Cove, which means we were up in the area, you know, of there, Freddie asked me, would I consider, you know, coming for lunch, you know, the club, and I did, and looking back, I can assure you, if I hadn't known the majority of the men, because it was a men-only club at the time, they had just had another female in, and she was a very, very young girl who absolutely was in a wrong environment at the wrong time. And I'm trying to wheel her in again now to become a Rotarian, you know.
Yes.
But like, if I hadn't known them, I would have left. And that's the honest
Really?
truth. I would have left probably after 3 or 4 months. Oh, yeah. They made it very clear to me that recently they had a vote about whether women should get into their club. And they made a big business of telling me to my face who would have voted against it. And me being me, I just said to them, well, tough, I'm here, you know.
Yes.
But it was not, there's no denying it. It was very, very tough. And I love telling the story of the day when I was getting inducted. There was another gentleman and myself, and we we were, well, he was called up first, you know, to the president, and he was talking about and all that, and he gave him his little pin and he put it on his jacket. And I had deliberately put a jacket on that day because I kind of saw they were wearing their pins on their jackets, right? So I'm called up, and again, was inducted, and the president, God rest his soul, he's passed away since, he gave it to me in my hands. So I looked at him and I said, excuse me, why are you not putting it on my jacket? So he leaned in over me and he whispered to me, I was afraid I was going to puncture something. And I looked back and I said, I can assure you, they are not puncturable. Put it on. So he did, and we became best friends from there on.
Well, isn't that wonderful?
So you know, but yeah, so and then, you know, as in other clubs today as well, nobody wanted to be president. So I joined in 2006. I was already president in 2009-10.
Right.
So, and you know, so that's how I started, really. So
But
yeah.
that's how you started, But you didn't stop there.
No, I didn't. I liked it. We were a very active club at the time, you know, amongst all the clubs in Cork and all that, and I really liked it. But to be honest with you, it was a few years really before I began to understand the setup of Rotary and what it was all about. And I think, like a lot of other Rotarians, when you realize how big we are and where we are more than just the club you're in and in the town you're in, that really appealed to me. So I also began visiting clubs because I've always been traveling because my family, you know, are in America and other places, in Denmark and all that. So I saw the bigger picture and I really liked that. Now, I can assure you, I never, ever, ever aimed to become district governor. Not at all. And what happened then was that due to losing the business, moving it back to Tallow, it didn't fit, for me to continue being in a club in Cork. And I joined Youghal Rotary Club. And then, of course, they were short of presidents as well, and kind of thought, well, might as well get it over and done with, So I became president there after I had really started. And then when I finished that, I remember very, very clearly. I mean, I liked it a lot coming, to the events and all that, but I had no notion of really doing anything more in Rotary. And I remember when I finished that year in Youghal, I said to all my Rotary contacts and all that, I said, please just leave me alone. I need a year where I'm doing nothing. I just want to be an ordinary member and relax and enjoy that part of it. But of course, that didn't last long because I got a phone call from the then district governor, Jerry, whom I honestly did not know who was. I had removed myself so far, I didn't even know who the DG was that year. And he rang me and asked me, would I take on the role as assistant governor, like you have, Joe, in the Zone 6, which was then Cork and Kerry. So after a little bit of debating and talking to other people, I kind of thought, well, okay, I better do that. Now, thanks to Joe, because Joe had been whispering in Jerry's ear about me. So that's how that happened. And yeah, and it was late in the game. It was in September, where you're supposed to be appointed before, the year starts and all that. So I've had a kind of a hard learning, in a short space of time.
Yeah. But once you became AG, you didn't stop there either.
No, I didn't. And again, it's pretty amazing when I look back. I've said it to a few of you before. It's almost like this happens by default in a funny way, not a funny way, a sad way in one case. Because when I was appointed to be AG, there was already an AG in place, but unfortunately, due to her parents' illness, she had to withdraw. So again, that's how I came in late in that. And then with the DG role, you know yourself, they're elected 3 years in advance and all that. And Ivan, Connor from help me, Joe, what club is he from again? I visited them the other day up in the north. Can't think of it right now. It'll come to me in a minute. And Ivan was elected to be the district governor for this year. And we all know, unfortunately, sadly, I passed away not too long after. And I was, like everybody else around me, we were convinced that it would then be Sam Grove, who had run against him, that automatically would take over the role. But as it turned out, that's not the rules. So you have to have another election. And now I had a club, Mallow, who had literally been poking me for literally since I started AG, and kept saying, we need somebody like you, Connie. I said, no, you don't. Rotary is not ready for somebody like me, so you don't. And it got to a point where every time I visited him, I said, guys, will you just stop talking about it? Okay. I mean, that was way before it was in the books. So, but what happened was we were over across the waters for some training, and William, that was last year's district governor. We were sitting around the table there one night having dinner, and something came up, and he right across the table said, Connie, I'm going to ask you something here now. Would you run for DG after me? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. And it took me a couple of weeks, seriously, to think about it, talk to people, and here I am. So, but in all honesty, I did not think that I would have been chosen because I'm not a young Rotarian by any means, but I'm probably one of the DGs that has had the shortest build up to becoming a DG, and therefore I was convinced that absolutely they would have chosen a more mature, person, that would be.
Someone with more
So here
experience.
I am. And what a year.
Well, indeed, and I can echo, that feeling that you have when I remember when we met at the PETS meeting, the president-elect training session at the end of February, beginning of March. There were little rumors that the pandemic, it wasn't then really a pandemic, it was more, this virus that we're going to have to control. And we didn't even have social distancing at it. But we were conscious that this might be a bigger problem. But we never envisaged that it would be this deep. It's such a year to be district governor. It's such, and yet Rotary has probably never been as important for members because that sense of fellowship, which we value so much, we have to find new ways of developing that fellowship, of enhancing it, of ensuring that people feel still that Rotary belongs to them and that they belong to Rotary. What has been the biggest fulfillment that you've had since you became district governor?
Oh, I have a lot, Ian. I really have a lot. You see, what happened with me was that on the Saturday, on the 25th of January, when we finished in San Diego, and for those of you who don't know, that is that big assembly training that I am so thankful that I got to attend. But on that Saturday, it was announced that the first COVID case was in San Diego. So I'll never forget that date, and as you said, we came back, and I think that the fulfillment that I have from it is that I am so blessed and I'm so thankful that I can see a silver lining in all of this. Mm. I honestly think that me and my personality and my way of leading and my way of not always thinking before I speak and sort of calling the spade a spade, I am not so sure that it would have gone down so well if it was person to person going around traditionally visiting the clubs. I really think that for the majority of us, we have accepted this is the new world. So therefore, we got to change. And I hope I'm about change. I hope my legacy will be that obviously not the first female, but I'm certainly the first person that's not born in either Ireland or England. And I probably do have different attitudes, that a lot of people. But my kind of fulfillment for it is that I can still, as you said earlier, I'm visiting 2 clubs today. Wow, that doesn't really have happened in the real world, I am thankful to see that we have moved literally, I believe, at least 10 years out. I'm busy organizing a virtual conference. I mean, who would have thought in a million years that us traditional people here on this Ireland who haven't, a conference that lasts over 3 days, cost a fortune and all that, all of a sudden it's free for everybody, and we can do this. So I see the silver lining in most of it, Ian. I really do.
Well, we that silver lining out of the threadbare little things that have happened. One of the things that we saw you at recently was the national launch of the Bikes for Africa program that Jason has been so actively involved in and that our club has been so active in promoting and developing. And when I was talking with you there, I was just asking about, how are other clubs managing? And you said that, and this is perhaps the darker side of the COVID crisis, that some clubs are using this as an excuse not to do anything, as a reason, oh, sure, there's nothing we can do, therefore we do nothing. Has that been a bigger problem than you would have hoped?
Oh, indeed. Yes. I'm an optimist by nature, so of course I thought, sure, everybody's happy to be a Rotarian. Of course they'll carry on, as best they can. Unfortunately, that is not the real life.
Yeah.
And I mean, for you who are, I'm sure you all know by now, you are the biggest club in the district. You are certainly a club that tick all the boxes. And I think it's very, very good of you, Ian, to ask me that question, because not every club is like you. Far from it. I don't know, Joe might kind of agree with me here, and I would say, I haven't done a full count, but I'll say approximately only a little over half of our clubs are what I would call still active,
Mm.
and still maintaining some form of normality. But unfortunately, that leaves maybe 40% of our clubs that are literally in limbo right now.
Yeah.
We have clubs who are outright telling us, don't want to do this. We are not going to meet again until this is over. Now, and I know it's a harsh thing to say, but it's a true thing to say. As long as they pay their dues,
Yeah.
they're Rotarians, okay? However, had this been in a real world, if that was happening, I, as DG, would literally have the power to threaten them, to take their charter away from them if they only pay their dues.
Yes.
And of course, that's not going to happen this year.
No.
So what happens is that we are trying, literally, I mean, Joe knows that, Jason knows that, we are trying really, really hard to pick them up, those who cannot do it themselves. Now, we also have another problem that's come to the forefront, and a year like this really showcase it, and that is the average age group of our Rotarians in this district. We don't know exactly, because not everybody wants to give us their age, but I think we can rest assured that the average age is definitely either close to 70 or over 70. So it's fully understandable. Human beings, I mean, this whole situation gave us all a shock to the system. And, it's very, very difficult to ask older Rotarians. And I hate to say it, but there are men, because back then it was only men. And the thing is that you know yourself how difficult it is to change your mindset, accept the change. And when you're older, it is very, very hard. So yes, Ian, it is. I mean, I didn't even think about it in the beginning of this year, because nobody knew what was going to happen, but it has certainly come home now. We are in a situation where we have members who have not yet paid their subs. There's another bill coming up, in January, and I can see us again probably losing, some members who will turn around and say, nah, it's not for me.
And
So
yeah,
go
I
on.
mean, we're faced with that in our own club, successful and all as we like to think we are, that we haven't managed to engage everybody. That said, a lot of people who haven't engaged with us have still paid their dues this year. So that is encouraging. And I'm sure many more will, they just need a little helpful encouragement. But the activities that, I mean, it's one thing, the one thing that drives Rotary is the conversation around the dinner table, the conversation about the matches yesterday, about the weather, about the American presidential elections. That's the conversation that eventually leads to ideas coming up about what we can do to aid the world, the country, or our community. And that's where projects are fomented and come into fruition. And we're missing that. And that's why it's important that the projects that we already have in line, that we keep those going, even though they're difficult. Because so many of the projects involve people gathering, people meeting, people communicating. And maybe it was easier for us to be actively involved in a project like the Aid to Lebanon, because that didn't involve us meeting. It involved us collecting and distributing. and acting as a signpost or acting as a focal, a central point to for the distribution of stuff that was already out there. And the same with the Bikes for Africa. We're collecting things that are already out there and bringing them to a fixed point, and we're responsible for getting them elsewhere. But it doesn't involve meeting. But the projects that really that stay in people's minds, that are the ones where people are sitting around the table, and we long for the return of those days. Have you been, what work have you done as district governor in relation to the projects that Rotary is actively involved in? Are there any projects that are particularly close to your heart?
Not really. They're all close to my heart.
Yeah.
And one of the
It's
proofs
like
of
asking
that
your
is,
favorite child then.
yeah. Well, no, it's not really, because I tell you, it's quite unusual as well this year. And again, it was some decision I'd made long before COVID was there. I don't have a pet project, you know, and I call them pet projects because if the tradition of a district governor is to each year have a baby project, okay, pet project, whatever you want to call it. And I honestly thought that by the time that we had pets and I really looked into all the clubs up and down the country, I thought, we don't need another one here. We have more than enough to choose from. And together with my team, of course, you know, we decided which ones to focus on in each department. And I really don't, that's the honest truth. I don't have any pet project. I like them all. I think we are fantastic so far with the help of Jason and his team. You know, we have done amazing work in international, and it is developing more and more into other avenues for the future. Willie in community is working really, really hard as well to try and help you out. The youth, unfortunately, I feel really, really sorry for the youth team at the moment, because I think they're the worst hit at the moment. It's very, very difficult. You are lucky that you have Elaine in your club, you know, who is having her Interact club, you know, so therefore you can still kind of be in touch, but you're unique. I mean, really nobody else has that as far as I know. So I really think, Ian, that my message really to the clubs and the Rotarians, those that I've met so far, is use this time to have a good look. Now, again, it's kind of obsolete in a way to Kilkenny because I was present myself. I know you did your sort of your health check, you know, and made a strategic plan and all that stuff. But a lot of clubs don't. So I tell them to use this time to those who can meet. But I mean, it can be done on an email as well if they don't want to meet. Have a good discussion of where are we as a Rotary Club? Are we actually attractive to new members? Should we now use this time to plan ahead and do something else? I also say to them, I really, really would like all Rotarians to get back to basics. And I mean going back to basics in order to move forward, because it would be lovely to see that we actually made a Rotarian out of every member instead of the other way around. Because unfortunately, the other way around is quite heavy around us, you know. So things like that. Now I know, Ian, we can't go out. We can't go out. Fellowship is the top core value that we have in this organization. I mean, I myself, I love people. I love being around people. And that's the hardest part personally for me, that I can't go out and give people a hug and, you know, meet everybody and all that. But I think that if you go back to the core of Rotary, we are what? We're a service organization.
Yes.
We're service above self. It used to be that service was generated from our vocations. And I don't care what you are of vocation. Everybody, I'm sure, in Rotary has some gift to give of their vocation. And I think that it would be wonderful if this year could develop that again and carry it forward. And there's no stopping you doing this online. I mean, you can invite anybody, you know, in to talk to you. You can invite any group. I mean, the sky is a limit at the moment, you know, for those of you who do meet online. And then don't focus so much on the fundraising. I know it's sad, and I know we want to help. I know, we are an organization that we help other charities by fundraising for them, but everybody is in the same boat this year, guys. So don't feel guilty about that you can't fundraise. Every little will help. A lot of clubs are, for instance, taking their lunch money or their dinner money, that they normally use. So they put themselves into a little pot, help out. And I haven't sent it to you guys yet. Joe might have got it yet, the list. I think I sent it to him last night. There's a quite interesting list of ideas, that one of my colleagues across the waters, he had kind of accumulated of of ideas you can do online. You can do it as a fundraising event. We did murder mystery last Friday, y'all. I tell you, we had 3 hours. We were peeing in our pants laughing. It was so funny. But we raised money with it, So like I think we raised 600 or 700 euro, So like, I mean, use your imagination. Now, for the clubs who are not meeting, Ian, like this online, obviously that's the problem,
Yes.
But look, we have to accept that, as I said, if they just stay Rotarians, we will pick them up, hopefully, some of them, when this is over.
Well, I can tell you that Joe has already circulated that list to us.
Okay,
so
good.
when we have our next council meeting, we look at what ones we can pick up and run with, because it's those ideas, those and I always believe if someone else comes up with a great idea, let's all use it. We can steal an idea and use it for ourselves. It's not a case of borrowing. Let's steal it and make it our own. Because that critical element of engagement, of fellowship, if that's lost, if we become purely a manager of fundraising events, then we lose what the real spirit of Rotary. One of the things that we will be doing is we want to there's two things. We want to maintain the link that we have with members, and that's why we have these weekly meetings. Even if we don't have a speaker, we still meet every week, so just to keep the link going. And the other thing is that we want to keep the link with our primary beneficiary at Christmas in our Remembrance Tree project. So when this meeting is over, I'm going out to do an interview with the person in charge of the Carlow Kilkenny home care team. And we've given over 20,000 euro a year for the last number of years. It has reached just €250,000 since we started the project about 16 years ago. This year, it's completely different. We may not raise as much money. We may raise only a tiny fraction of what we have normally raised, but keeping the connection is so critical, to keep it in the public mind and to keep some money coming into them. So we're doing an interview. We'll put it up on our I Donate page in the hope that it attracts people when they hear the story, that they will be able to loosen their purse strings and in some way, or take out their credit card and put an online donation towards us. But these are ways that are not as, they're not going to be as effective, but it still keeps that connection. And I think that's what you're doing in your role this year, is keeping the connection with the clubs to ensure that we don't lose that which is most valuable in being a Rotarian and being part of this wider world community.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's crucial. It's crucial that we stick together. Another thing I have begun to sort of say to the different clubs that I speak to, reach out to other clubs. I mean, Joe is your AG. You're lucky to have your AG in your club, But I mean, I'm asking the AGs as well, to try and see if you find out that there is a club in, let's say, even Dingle, to give you an example, what's to stopping you from inviting the Rotarians in Dingle, to attend one of your meetings or an evening fun or whatever you decide to do, and keep up that connection and keep up that fellowship. And on that sort of line, I have befriended two of the other DGs across in England, David Hartley, who is down in North Wales, and Marius Hoppe, he's sort of over the other side of London. And the three of us, we're calling ourselves the Three Amigos. And we have regular meetings and we have a lot of fun together. We really like each other. We have decided, and you will see it now over the next couple of days, my next newsletter is coming out. We are actually asking clubs up and down my district and their districts to contact each other. Let's use this time this year to build friendships, across the waters. And please God, then whenever we can see each other again in real life, we can travel, we can meet each other. And I mean, that's the part of Rotary. I think is so fantastic. It's that connection, that fellowship. So that's another thing we can do to help each other.
Great, yeah. I've muted everybody else, but if anyone would like to ask Conny a question or have any comment for Conny, just unmute yourself and let me know that you want to speak. Is there anyone out there who does want to say anything?
Before we
Yes.
do that, Ian, I got something to tell you because I forget. You had applied for a grant for, is it SOS?
Yes.
Yeah, you are getting it.
Oh, hallelujah.
Yeah, you're getting it. And I apologize sincerely on behalf of district. We have had, due to COVID, first of all, and then due to, unfortunately, Neve has battled a bit of illness here. And so things have been a bit delayed. But you will actually receive a letter within the next 2 days about it.
Well,
and
now,
once that is received, Seamus has the money, so it shouldn't be long then before it will be paid out. So just
now, as it happens, we have Anne Corr as part of our group here today. That's Anne. Anne,
hiya.
would you like to say anything?
Hi, Conny.
That I'm just calling on you unexpectedly, Anne. If there's anything that you'd like to say.
Thanks, Ian, and thanks, Conny. Well, firstly, I have to say thank you to everybody on behalf of SOS, and it's just great news for us to be able to secure this funding. Particular thanks. Can you hear me, Ian?
Yes, we can indeed.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. A particular thanks, I suppose, to Jason and Joe and everybody who helped us, and Conny, everybody who helped us on this journey. And coincidentally, I did have some concerns. We were finding it challenging to engage with the supplier, and we had some good news there on Friday that we found them again. There's a lead time of about a short lead time than we expected, and yeah, we're really looking forward to this. And for us as an organisation, front and centre, I suppose, have real challenges from a disability perspective. And we had a closure of our day services back in March. We have our day services have reopened again since September, and as an organisation, this really gives, I suppose, some positive news that and really fits in with where we are also in our future plans. And in fact, we are looking at another one, if not two. We're looking at funding proposals coming up, and we're looking at the Tover Taffel for use in specific houses now, which we had never considered before because the older persons were coming to these services here on the Callan Road. So we've sort of tipped it on its head, and the learning we had from, I suppose, exploring the use of the Tover Taffel, the application for funding, and obviously securing it, has given us another idea to move forward and sort of stabilizes the situation now that we have here. So it's good news everywhere. So thanks again.
Great. Great. This is the second major funding that Kilkenny has got in the last couple of months. The Interact Club benefited as well. So we're particularly grateful to Rotary Ireland for their generosity. And it just shows that the work that we have done in raising money has grown exponentially by generating a response from the Rotary Foundation and from Rotary itself. So thanks very much, Anne. That was a great contribution. Does anyone else have anything to say in relation to Connie's talk this afternoon? As I say, form an orderly queue there. Just I would ask if anyone does want to speak that they unmute themselves, and then when you're finished, remute, because there's some interference coming in sound-wise.
Ian, I might just say something there if you don't mind, and to thank Conny publicly, I suppose. I mean, it's not often we have so much influence and support from a DG as a club, but even in your year when you were DG, DGE, District Governor-elect, there was a huge amount of support that you gave to everything that we've done at Kilkenny, right up along, right back as far as I think the 40th anniversary in the castle was the first time I met yourself and Frank. So that's stretching back now to May 2019, I think. So you've been an ever-present support to our club since, even though everyone mightn't realise that, you've been there in the background. And I think publicly it's worthy just to say thank you for that, Connie.
Yeah.
So,
Thank
Mila
you,
Bucas.
Jason. Much appreciated. Yeah.
One question.
Yeah, go on.
One question you might leave us with before you go is to give us a little taster of what you're planning for your virtual conference.
Absolutely. Before I do that, may I just say that I am so thankful that I got introduced to SOS as well. I mean, my first introduction to SOS was Chris, you know, when we had the famous lunch, you know, up there. I'll never forget it. It was so fantastic, you know, so I'm delighted that we can help, you know, in any way possible for that center, that you're doing amazing work. Yes, conference, guys. Oh dear, what a journey. As you know, we had it really in your lined up to be this 2020 big, you know, thing to celebrate. And our theme for the conference, which is still the same, by the way, is taking care of our environment, our communities, and ourselves. So it was all, as you can hear, kind of circulate around what has become even more important, you know, that we are now in the middle of this pandemic. So yes, we were supposed to have had it the last weekend of September, you know, that got postponed till March. And then that got kind of, you know, closed down as well, because we had to make the decision about 6 months prior. So I've been in limbo, lads, a lot of limbo. I did not want my conference to be an extended Zoom meeting. I would rather not have anything. But now here we are. We have finally made a huge decision. We have hired an outside company who happens to have a CEO that's a Rotarian, which really helps a lot. And we are now working really hard on creating a virtual conference that will be on the date that we actually moved to. So Saturday, the 6th of March next year. And it will be a conference that is not delivered on a Zoom platform. Don't ask me what is delivered on, because I don't know the name of it, but it will be accessible via our website. And it will be in such a format that roughly 80% of the content will be pre-recorded. And if COVID will allow it, myself and Kieran O'Connor, you know, who is my president in Youghal and also the conference chair from there, we could maybe be live. And if we are live, it would be in a studio, probably in Dublin, or maybe the crowd. It's a Dublin company we have hired. They may come down to Cork. We don't know. We are aiming it to be hopefully better than the Late Show the night before. So it's going to be a format of, you know, like you're doing now, Ian, you know, you're sort of presenting, you're interviewing and telling about what's going on. The conference itself will be a 2-hour in the morning from like 10 to 12. We'll have a break then for an hour and a half, and then we'll take 2 hours more in the afternoon. That's the conference itself, the platform. But outside of that, we're creating literally the best we can as we normally would have in a traditional conference. So there will be, you remember how we always have that, what do they call the friendship, house of friendship, or whatever they call it, you know, where you have people displaying, you know, from other charities and all that as well. We will have that, we will have breakout rooms, but they won't be accessible while the 2 hours of the main conference is going on, because we don't want to lose our audience, you know, in between that. So let's say it'll probably open at 9 o'clock in the morning. It'll be open till 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but then it will stay on our website for as long as we want it there. So everybody can visit it afterwards as well. Now you can imagine, guys, this opens up a super opportunity to get speakers from all over the world. I have already secured our first female Rotary International president, Jennifer Jones. She's going to be there. And I have a few others that I won't really mention the names yet because they may not happen. But those of you who listened to me earlier, you know that there's one particular famous TV interviewer that I would like on it. And it's getting close and it can happen. Okay. So it's exciting. We're hoping that everybody will join. It's free. It's going to be free for everybody. We are, and I know this sounds crazy, but Connie's a bit crazy at times. We're aiming for minimum 2,000 attendees. We are inviting all the Rotarians, not only here in Ireland, but across the waters. We'll encourage you to invite non-Rotarians. We ourselves will do a huge PR. It will literally start this week, you know, where you will start getting what we call teasers, you know, where it'll be going, save the date, you know, then the next thing, then the next thing. Then we include gamification. I don't know if you guys know about gamification.
Yep.
So like, let's say it'll be something like the first 500 that register can win a night in Bhutan, or whatever, you know, all things like that. So it's very exciting, daunting, but it's I believe that it's going to be good. And look, guys, it might be the first of many of similar going forward. You know, who knows? It could be a long time before we ever could get back and get what we see as a traditional conference. It might never happen. So I hope, and I know already, of course, I'll get full support from Kilkenny. You know, you will all show up, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
So that's already what, 50 attendees, and you all invite a non-Rotarian, so that's the first 100, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you've thrown down a challenge to us now to make sure that we do have as many as possible participate in that virtual conference in March. So we keep the date, the 6th of March, in our diaries and set all sorts of alarms out to get people coming along on the day. So it's a one-day conference, morning and afternoon?
Yes, just a one day.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, that's it. And I'm sure you can see through it, Ian, and everybody else. We are really wheeling in public image and membership here, you know, into the whole conference, you know, program, big time. So,
yeah,
so
I mean, the one thing you don't want to be doing is preaching to the choir. You know, that you want to be able to attract people who are not necessarily Rotarians, but that you engage people from Rotary who are peripherally involved in Rotary, you know, and that they feel, wow, maybe I should be involving myself a bit more in this. And it's not a lot. If people have enough notice to put the time aside, it's one thing to have a Zoom meeting that lasts 40 minutes and you can forget about those. But if this is happening in March, we know about it now, we can plan around it to make sure that people participate. And we'll keep plugging that at our events. We do a newsletter here, so we'll let it be known.
I know you do, and you do a good one. Yeah, you do a good one. Well done, Ian. Well, you're doing really good.
There's only one so far, so
keep it up. Keep it up.
Like, you know, it's like the pop singer's second album. You know, it's never as good as the first one.
All about it.
Anyway, is there anyone else out there who wants to ask Connie anything about what she said today, or questions about what she has in mind for the future? As I say, I hear a resounding silence, which I think is symptomatic of the fact that people have heard quite a lot.
Rosine has her hand up.
I just sorry, Ian, to interrupt. No, I just want to say it's always a breath of fresh air to hear Connie speaking. I really enjoyed the event today. I always love listening to Connie, right from that famous SOS lunch, which was fantastic. And I'm really looking forward to this conference. It's already in my diary. It's there now, and I'm looking forward to it. And just thanks very much for your time today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rosine. Very much.
Ian, I was just going to say something quite similar to Roshin. I think Connie's enthusiasm is infectious. So we have a positive virus as well as a not so pleasant virus. And I admire her courage in taking on a very innovative conference. And I wish you well, Connie, with the conference and all your planning for it. Best of luck. It takes courage to do something as different as that, but you will be successful.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yep. And, you know, the measure of success isn't so much the number of people that attend, but those that do attend, what they get from it. And so therefore the content and the running of it. And I'm looking forward to it, because Zoom is fine, but I'm looking for new ways of making it interesting. And having a talk from someone like yourself today is really positive and helpful. And I'm hopeful that we can spread the word that we're active, we're relevant, and that we are still a club with which to be reckoned. And the measure of that will be what we manage to achieve at the end of this year, and to keep the club going, to keep the club, if possible, growing. So with that, I'd like to thank Conny for making the time available today, and also to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. These meetings are they're as good as they can be, given that it's such a limited format. But next week, we have a really interesting speaker in Tom Moore. Tom is the director of the Cartoon Saloon, which is unique in Ireland, and probably unique amongst animation studios apart from Disney, in that they have been nominated for 4 Oscars in the last number of years, starting with The Book of Kells, and The Secret of the Sea, and the one that I found most intriguing, The Breadwinner, a couple of years ago. But they've now produced a new cartoon called Wolfwalker, which is fortunately based in Kilkenny, and it's a long way from Kabul, where the Breadwinner was based, to the castle walls here in the Marble City. Tom will be talking about the evolution of the Cartoon Saloon, how it grew out of young Irish filmmakers, how he himself got his training in Ballyfermot, and how he based himself in Kilkenny, and why Kilkenny has become such an important part of the world animation scene. They employ something between themselves and the other studio with which they're associated, Lighthouse, over 300 people in Kilkenny. And it's an important part of the Kilkenny economy, but it's also one of the organisations that enhances Kilkenny's image as Ireland's capital of culture. So we look forward to Tom joining us at 1 o'clock on Monday next. I'd like to thank everyone for joining with us today. It's been a wonderful pleasure having Conny and the inspirational talk that you gave us today that will keep the spark of Rotary alive with us. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. And may I just say, when you have an exciting speaker like that, why don't you extend your invitations?
Yeah.
Why don't you invite other Rotarians to join in? You know, it's probably a limit how many would join in the middle of the day, but still, you know, give them the opportunity to come along.
Thank you for that suggestion. And it's a good idea, because I know one of the clubs in Dublin does that, and they circulate a recording of their interview with their conversation. And we'll be making this conversation that we've had today available to our members, for those that I know wanted to be part but weren't able at lunchtime today to join us. So that's a great idea, Conny. Thank you for that. And thank you, everybody else.
On that note, there's somebody on. Is it today? It's today at 5:30. Matt Porter. You know, those of you who know Matt Porter up in Dublin, he is doing it through Ronan's Club Dublin Central there, and they, I think, have sent out the invitation via DMS. And that's what you should do. You know, include everybody.
That's great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to end today's meeting and look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.
Thanks,
Stay
take care,
safe.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye.